Hi guys, in this video we're going to take a look at the most Games Workshop style miniature I have painted to date.
Scruffy Crow.
Okay, so this is from Titanforge, and I got it in the recent sale, so 50% off. And I do own a Nurgle sort of 40k army, and I've always quite liked that aesthetic. It's very fun to paint, and I've not done anything like that recently, so I thought it might be interesting to do a big Nurgly demon thing, and I quite like this sculpt. This is only half of it, so this was sort of one printer's worth, and it looks like we may have had a couple of problems. One thing here that we had, the supports didn't quite hold up this sort of nub under here, and I've had to carve a bit of that away, but thankfully we've not had any problems on this main chunk of body, which, although it is kind of hollowed, it's not hollowed the way I'd have done it normally. It's got quite a bit of weight to it, and this was quite a reasonable amount of resin. But we do actually have a little flat spot here actually, so I am currently still having a little bit of a problem with support. Now this is a problem that I have noticed I get a lot more with this ABS-like, Elegoo ABS-like, and I've been switching through various resins recently, and I think the big take home that I've kind of realised is that you get what you pay for. I've used way more expensive resins and I have like no problems with all the same settings basically. But it doesn't seem to matter what I do with this ABS, like I get occasional little sort of quirks and problems. Like I said, the main part of this, so what you can see me picking off here is just a few little supports that have got through, and bits that have caught in the crevices. So you get tiny little support sections like that there. This model didn't come supported, so the supports I did myself. I mean, I could probably play around with them. If I ever have to print this again, I'll keep an eye on that little bit, for instance, and work out what went wrong there. But the detail, see if we can get that in, and texture on this guy is stunning. We've got these tiny little sort of maggots and bits, and these sort of pipe sections, we've got a little valve and stuff there, are really sort of sharp and clear. It's printed at 0.03. So you can't actually see any mould lines. This looks like a cast piece of resin. Which is another thing I wanted to mention, is that I've had actual resin models from Titanforge back in the day, both online and picked up at Salute, and they've never made a bit of resin this nice. I've got to admit that their quality of their cast resin was always a bit ropey to me. There was a lot of cleanup required. It was never quite, as clean as you'd like, and it wasn't a very nice resin to work with either. Whereas this is, it's fine. I'm using the ABS-like, so it's actually quite similar to sort of a cast resin in sort of the way you can carve it and stuff, though it will fracture more easily. Okay, so just fetch the second batch of parts off the printer. Just cleaning them up the same as I did before. So there's 4 of these legs that should be identical. However, I did flip 2 of them. I don't know if that's going to make much difference, so we've got mirrors of them, but it could be interesting. So I might have made my life a little bit harder than it needed to be for the sake of a little bit of variety. Once again, I've got one of these flat points, but nothing that's not easily sorted, and nothing on any of these sort of actual parts of the model. Once again, we've got an awesome amount of detail on bits like this face. Now this is weird, so I'm trying to get this arm on, and it feels like we've got like a really good fit on the front on the most part, but then on the back, I suppose actually it's meant to be like a fold. I'm going to let this part sort of dry out a bit. I think once they come out of the IPA, they are a little bit swollen, I think. I don't know, because I think curing is mostly what makes them smaller. But I feel like if that was a fraction of a mil smaller, that would fit a lot nicer. So I might just leave this for a little while. Let's have a look at the legs. Obviously they slide in quite nice. So if that's that one. There we go, got all 4 of the legs. So that without any glue, they've all slotted in real nice. And it means that because I've mirrored those 2, we've got the big cogs all facing inwards. And this is just a base I went and found left over from a different project. It's 100mm, I believe. Here looks it. And he fits on here real nice. Oh, and the hand onto the arm. That's a good tight fit as well. I think once this model's together, it's not going to go anywhere. Alright, I left it an hour or so, and I carved a little bit off the inside of here, and I got it to fit quite nice. It's going to require a bit of green stuff, I think, but it was a reasonable fit. I'm actually a little bit surprised I had that much trouble. Normally, sort of 3D printed parts do fit a bit nicer than even real resin from a, cast resin. But yeah, of course I got all the legs on. I didn't like the fact that this one was kind of raised up, and to sort of make it touch the floor, I'd have to have tucked it right under. I kind of wanted it more extended. So I've added a bit of slate to the base. So when they stands on, he's kind of like propped himself up against that. And I think that kind of adds to the whole pose. Okay, so I've given this a little while for all the glue to fully sort of cure, all the resin sort of harden up and everything. And I've mixed up some green stuff, equal parts. And I'm going to start filling some of these holes. I'm going to start with the down side of the neck, because that's one of the easiest, I think. I'm just going to go sausage, roll it quite thin, lay it in the gap where we need to start, and use my little metal spoony tool just to spread that through. And I quite like the idea there's a nice deep crease here, so I don't want to sort of take that away. So I'm going to push this about as far into the hole as my tool will allow. I'm just going to keep working this along, stretching it out. And when I run out of sausage, I'm just going to repeat it. Just do that again until I find myself pretty much back where we started. I'm just going to neaten this up with the metal tool, make sure this is all exactly where we want it. I actually want a little bit more under there. And then I'm going to switch to this rubber clay shaping tool. I'm just going to wedge that in the gaps, and once again I can't go too deep because of the shape of it, and what this does is it absolutely smooths out the green stuff and blends it in with the surrounding sort of resin parts. So we go from the sort of, I can't quite show you, like green stuffy looking bit, and then we run this through and it all should be perfectly smooth and blended. Now I'm giving my tool a little lick. You can of course use just plain water or Vaseline, but if you use Vaseline you have to obviously give it a wash afterwards before we put any paint on. There we go, and that's my first joint done and I'm happy with it. So I'm going to go around, I'm going to put some in some of the gaps in the legs but not be overly worried about it. In fact, possibly actually not. So yeah, I will sort this bit out under here and around the back there, and then we'll get him on the base. Alright, so now he's all neatened up. I just put a dab of glue on each foot and on his front hand here, which I think is going to do a lot of the holding down to start with, because the foot contact points are obviously quite slim. I'm going to let that cure, and then I'll do a layer of PVA and throw some sand on there like I would normally. There's the sand on. I even put a bit on top of the rock, try and blend all that in. And we've added some sort of smaller stones as well for a bit of variety here and there. In here is the big guy, all based up and undercoated. And once again with the undercoats you can really see the cool level of detail we've got on this guy. So this is the black, Halford's matte black first, so we've got that in all the nooks and crannies so we're not going to miss anything. And then I've gone over sort of with a zenith on the grey a little bit, just to help me bring out some nice flat colours early on. Without trying to cover too much black. So we use this nice fluffy makeup brush to get this first base coat on, because it means I can get the paint on really nice and thin and really work it into any little gaps and details. And as I said before, I use these nice sort of plushy brushes in lieu of an airbrush, which is what would be another good way of doing this sort of stage, I think. Okay, so here's our second somewhat more thin down coat just drying now, and that is looking pretty fantastic. Well, also kind of disgusting. I am thinking that maybe it might have been easier to paint this guy without the legs on, but I pretty much always construct my models before I paint them. And I guess in a lot of ways my my theory has always been, if you can't see, if you can't get a paintbrush to any of the bits, even if you use a smaller paintbrush, you're not going to see them. So I'm going to work on this skin tone some more now. So we're going to use sort of thin down sort of layers of progressively more flesh, and we'll do a few layers, just working it up to get to the sort of level we want. Okay, after just double checking something, it turns out that I actually was meaning to use this Death Guard green as my my base colour and work up to a sort of flesh colour. But we've gone with the Deathwell Forest. I knew it started with the word death. Anyway, I quite like the sort of grubby brown colour this has ended up. So yeah, this has stopped being me doing it like I did it a couple of years ago, and turned into a complete random experiment. Okay, I wasn't really going to show too many of these steps, but that was a 50-50 mix, and I kind of forgot how much actual physical amounts of paint was required to cover a model like this. But it's actually really fun to do. So I've got this quite thinned down, so the first layer that went on was quite transparent, and I'm able just to keep adding layers on of this sort of 50-50 mix, just where I want it, so we can get the colour nice and pure on some of these parts. It's actually turned out to be a really nice colour in a kind of disgusting way. So I'm going to do so that was about sort of 80 and 90% coverage, just leaving the original colour in all the sort of crevices and everything. So now I'm going to mix in a little bit more of the Midland flesh, and this time I'm going to be a little bit less. I'm going to actually be very more specific about where this goes, so just on the most raised areas. So I'm going to go around and give it this, and then I might even go a little bit brighter till it's essentially almost entirely Midland flesh, just with a slight tint of the green. And you notice I'm using my wet palette for this. For me, that's the best way to get these sort of nice thin coats. It also means that any paint that I put on here is going to last me the session of the paint, and it stays wet, so I can kind of see what colour. So if I need to mix up more of exactly the same as this, I can see exactly what that looks like wet, and mix that up and match it all in. And I can, if I really want to, I can make sort of mixtures of these two and sort of work on that. So I've got a full sort of fade. If say I want to do sort of under here, maybe I don't want that quite as bright, so I can mix in a little bit of the other, and just makes the whole process a little bit more fluid. Okay, so I've filled in all those sort of blistered, wounded parts now all across, and it's looking quite nice, quite a good contrast. And you'll notice I've also added some of this sort of browny red, that's Mornfrang brown, to any of the parts that I'm going to do sort of metal. So pretty much his entire side, apart from this little armoured bit on the top, and yeah, all the backs of the legs. I said I'm going to do the armour plates white, just to sort of match him in with a few of the bits and pieces in my army. I've also thrown a bit of black on his horns, just to get an idea of what he's going to start to look like. I also went and dug out this guy. So this is probably one of the largest Games Workshop minis I've ever painted, probably one of the most expensive Games Workshop minis I've ever bought actually as well. Very cool mini actually though. Probably one of the most modern Games Workshop minis I've actually ever bought as well. Pretty much built straight out of the box, a few little conversions here and there, but nothing much, mostly just stuck some Nurglings on. Certainly sub-optimally armoured if you're going to play Age of Sigmar apparently, but do you know what? I like the big knives. But yeah, this is the sort of style of the rest of my Nurgle army. And this effect here, this very raw looking wounded effect, is what we're going to go for on here. So to give you an idea of sort of what I'm aiming for on these back parts, that's sort of more like it. Looking at this versus this one, I might lighten that skin up just a little bit, one tone more, to try and bring it a little bit more sort of contrast wise in line with this one. But I can't work out if I'd not realised how small this guy was, or not remembered how tall this guy was. But they certainly are quite a big difference in size side by side. Weirdly enough, this one's heavier. But I don't know what you guys think. I would probably still, in a sort of friendly game with my friends, either 40k or, God forbid, Age of Sigmar, use this guy as a Great Unclean one. Bearing in mind that's a 100mm base, where the old Great Unclean one was on a 50. So he's probably bigger than an old Great Unclean one. I don't have one to hand though. But yeah, I thought I'd show you what this guy looked like at this stage. I'm not sure. The yellow pustules is a theme across my Nurgle army, and I'm not sure whether I'm going to do it on this one or not. I have to have a think. But yeah, that's the sort of the pink tentacles and wounds is the sort of look we're going to go for. Oh, as is some of the metal on here, like these parts will have been done using my rust technique, which is what I've started with this brown, believe it or not. So yeah, that's kind of what we're going to go for there. My next stage is going to be to take the corn red that we use in the sort of recesses and sort of pinken it up a bit with some either some flesh tone or some sort of ivory colours, and add that into these recesses, but it's a sort of like reverse highlight. As you can see, it gets lighter the further in, while still keeping a good ring of this darker red around the outside. And I'll do, I don't know, 2 or 3 lighter layers as I go around. And I'll do a similar effect on his sort of tongue and sort of gums and all this stuff as well. Like I assume might be the case, I'm kind of changing the plan as we go, and I am going to add some yellow. It's going to be an arduous job because I'm going for anything that looks like a pimple of a decent size. I'm giving a yellow head to. I only decided to do this because I am actually decided as well that he's going to get a wash. I tried a couple out on this little guy who's the test model, and ended up deciding on the Beltane green. I think that'll give me some of the right sort of shades that I'm after on this model. It'll darken it down a little bit, so I will probably have to re-highlight afterwards. But I think, I just looked at him, I just thought he just needs a little bit more contrast. That skin was just looking a bit flat. Okay, I always stress when I'm washing a model that I've done quite as much work on as this, that I'm going to completely ruin it. Let's start. Let's see if we regret this horribly. No, I don't think we will. I think this is going to work and do what I want it to do. And the colour tone seems to be working quite well with the colours we've got down, and the yellow as well. I'm just going to go slow and steady with this, make sure all the creases get a nice wash, but that we don't end up with too much sort of brush strokes or anything on the bits we don't want to see it on. When I finish with this wash, I'm also going to do the metal parts. I'm going to give them an Agrex Earthshade wash as well to bring out the detail and set the low lights. So the 2 washes can go on at the same time and sort of dry together. And some of the creases like down here, they'll mingle together a bit, which I think will be cool. Alright, so the washes are on and drying. And I think we've lost something in the sort of depth of colour, but we've got the darknesses that I wanted now. And I think we can revive a lot of that. A, it'll look a bit better once it's dry. And 2, I think we can revive a lot of the highest highlights. And I know what colour I was using before because we've got it still on the palette and still revivable. I think that's overall an improvement though. And I said we've got the wash on the metal parts as well, so they're ready for their next step as well. Okay, so once the wash dried a bit, I re-highlighted with some of the mixed up green that we had. Re-added the yellow, and I worked on the pinks a bit more. And I think it has all come together rather nicely. So now we're going to work on the metals. For the next colour I'm going to use for that is going to be this Troll Slayer Orange. Now I'm going to dab a bit on this old brush here, and I'm going to take most of it back off. Now sometimes I use a little sponge for this, but I've got this brush which will work quite well. So I'm going to get it to it so it makes little patches like that. And I'm going to go in and I'm just going to dab this round all the bits that I want to be metal. Something a bit like that. And we basically, we want it quite dense. And it's basically anywhere, just the whole thing, make it look as rusty as possible. As I said, the other thing you can do is I've got a bit of foam here. This is out of a figure case, like one of the spacers. I'm just going to rip a little bit down. And there we go, we get a similar effect actually. I do prefer that actually. I'll probably carry on with the sponge. It's not as good for getting in the gaps though as the brush will be. So next up we've got some cold steel. This is a sort of medium silver, and this is what we're doing with it. Oh, it's kind of hard to pick up on the camera in the dark, but we are basically going around, and anywhere where there'd be wear, I'm painting in sort of line highlights of this silver. So up on that edge like that, and then we've got another edge coming down here. And then I think the gears would be a little bit worn on the teeth, where these little circles are. Just going round, doing that. And then obviously the blade on the thing here, that would be kept nice and sharp-ish. So I'm painting the whole thing out in silver to start with, up to the line. And then we've already got some sort of lines here, like dug in, but I'm also going to sort of follow them up. There we go. Sort of feather that in. Same kind of goes for all these staples, holding some of his body together. Just going to add silver, sort of almost highlights around those. Make them kind of metallic, but try and keep a good few of those rust colours showing through. Okay, that's all the metallics on, and I think they look pretty cool. Oh, that's the first layer anyway. So I'm going to give all those parts a black wash. But first, I'm going to start doing the legs. So these are going to be Celestia Grey to start with, because it's a really good base paint on for white. So any of the armour panels, so on the top of the scythe and on these legs and knees here, are going to be this Celestia Grey. And then I'll give all the legs, the grey and the metals, a black wash to bring the colour down and highlight some of the crevices and stuff. And I think that'll look quite good. And there's the legs white. So that's 2 to 3 very thin coats of this Celestia Grey to get this. So I want it absolutely flawless. Okay, so I've got the black wash on now, and that's probably one of my favourite layers. Look how nicely that's brought out that rust effect. And then we've got some shadow on the legs to help me sort of separate out all those plates. While that's drying, I'm going to work on the base a little bit. This is just, it's going to start with a really watered down Rhinox hide, which will take a while to dry as well. I've also been using a little bit of this silicon grey contrast, and I've been using that around a few of these vents. So for here, for instance, I'm not happy with the level of shadow, so I'm just literally putting a bit on around there and then wiping it off with my finger, just to give me that little bit deeper black line around there. Okay, now the leg's dry. I've got some more of the Celestia Grey, mixed quite a lot of white scar to make a nice bright white, and I've got that really watered down. I'm going to try and use this, just get these nice semi-transparent layers on, while leaving plenty of bits in the recesses. And this is the sort of thing where painting white is an absolute nightmare, I think, sometimes. I've spent a lot of time making sure I had a nice base to do it on. As long as we keep the paint nice and thin, we should get a nice result. And I'm happy to leave a bit of shadowing around these sort of bumps, but overall I want it to be quite a smooth looking paint job. So yeah, we're basically going from there to there, and I think that's as white as we're going to leave it. Alright, that's the white on, and one of my friends pointed out this actually does look a bit, it's got a bit of a War Machine vibe against it, the Crix look. But now I've got these legs all nice and smooth looking, I think that also gives it that some other sort of War Machine looks. Oh, still not done up here. Okay, so we're back to the sponge, just pulling another bit off. And I'm using black this time to get those same sorts of patterns again. And this time, this is what I use for battle damage on any kind of tank or mech. So this is what I'm going to be doing on these guys. I'm just going to dab this on some of these bits, which is a little bit painful for me, as I just spent quite a long time trying to make this white almost pristinely perfect. But if there's only about a bit that I didn't particularly like, then this is a good way of covering that as well. Like here, there's a bit of a dodge bit, so I'm going to go really dark with the stipples. Like I normally do when I'm doing this sort of technique, anywhere where we've got a concentration of these things, I'm just going to sort of stipple in and join a few of those bits up, especially along these edges. I'm also going to do a bunch more on the circles. I was going to do every single circle actually, but I'm not feeling that now. There we go, I think they're sufficiently bruised and battered actually, because I quite like in the how smooth I got the white. Now I want the brightest silver I've got, so I have been using this Quicksilver, but it's really bad for separating out, and even when I mix it for ages, I've not been getting the contrast recently on this that I wanted. I think I've got a bit of a rubbish pot. So I'm going to try this for the first time. It's just a fully sealed bottle. Obviously we'll give it a big shake and hopefully we can get some good effect with it. Oh yeah, it looks nice and mixed. And there's two places I want to use this. I'm not going to water it down. One is going to be anywhere where we just did battle damage. And I want that to look fresh and shiny, so we're going to brush it on and dab it into the gaps. This does appear to be a nice metallic actually. Almost too bright for this purpose. But there we go. We're going to sort of shadow the black with the silver. Try and get that into focus for you guys. And yeah, I think that's working how I want it to. The other place I want to use this is obviously we lost a little bit of the shine when we warmed this up. So there's a few places just like down these edges that I want to bring back the like down these edges where I want to bring back the sort of the freshness of some of those scrapes. And that looks really good. So really, really sparing on this. I'm going to go for a second line of feathering down the blade as well. Yeah, that looks sharp. On the legs, we're mostly just catching the gears with the super shiny, because they're going to be the sort of moving parts. But a few sort of little areas elsewhere, like on that sort of hinge in there. And I'll do a few areas just in his body to try and make some of these bits pop. I was initially going to make the chimneys a bit browner and sort of add some sort of soot and smoke effect maybe to the top. But actually I'm kind of preferring them looking like this. So they're getting actually a full, full ring of the shiny around the top to make it look like they've been sort of catching off stuff and knocking the rust off those actively. Okay, so we're on to finishing touches now. As you can see on the big guy, I made use of some gloss effects, and I like it. I know it's a bit of a cheesy way to do things, but I quite like it. I think it's fun. So we've got some of this Citadel Hardcoat, and we're going to use that in all of the sort of wounds in the mouth. That'll be about it actually. We've also got some of this Nurgles Rock, which I've not used in a long time. That'll be why that's separated out. And what this is for people not familiar, now I've got it all mixed together, is a sort of semi-transparent green paint that dries quite nicely in a sort of gloss thing, and it's actually quite thin. So I'm using it here. This is the only bit of the model I'll be using it on. Oh, in hindsight, maybe it's just too transparent and I should have painted this a colour first, but so there's this drips of this liquid all the way down. Basically I'm going to stick a load in this tube, and then when I stand it up the right way to dry, some of that will sort of move around a bit as well. And I'm also going to make sure everywhere that's got the sculpting for the liquid is slathered. And once that has set, that should look pretty cool and remain gloss as well. That's the hard coat. I just paint this in, trying to be careful not to get the skin, just get the pink bits. The thicker that goes on, the glossier that'll end up. I'm going to do all inside his mouth as well, which is why I haven't painted the teeth yet, because I want them to be more matte. So I'll do them after. I think that is the paintwork all finished. I'm going to let all the gloss bits dry. We'll paint the base rim black. Maybe add a few more highlights to some bits on the base. And then we'll get some flock and bits and pieces. So this one's got some sort of dead grass and some dead leaves on there. So I'll do similar on this. And we'll take a final look at him. Okay, the base is done, and I thought I'd finished, but I forgot to finish the teeth. So I've gone over the teeth with some Menoth white base. The horn and the fingernails are just black with a dark grey sort of highlight. And what I'm doing at the moment is the other bit I forgot, which was the maggots. I'm just going over them first with a Menoth white base, sort of creamy white colour. There's quite a few, so it's going to take me a while to get to them all, but oh, they look disgusting, so this is great. Okay, each one of the maggots will individually get a tiny little earthshade wash. Same with the teeth, just to bring out any texture on them. Give them a little bit of shadow. As you can see, I'm being quite delicate just to get the maggots in the immediate area around them. And it's bringing out those sort of body segmentations, as well as just giving them a bit of shadow and presence. And there we go, some of those little piles of maggots were actually enough to make me feel a little bit nauseous looking at them, if I'm honest. But yeah, no, I think we are finally done. So here he is, all finished up, and I am really chuffed with the way he came out. Loads of different sort of textures and shapes. It was kind of fun to work off, nice varied project between the metal and the white parts and the skin and all the disgusting little gribbly bits. Yeah, absolutely tons of fun to work on, and I think it's been worthwhile, even if I got a bit fed up with him at the end. Just because sometimes I do get when I'm painting a big model, sometimes get a bit fed up close to the end. But no, definitely worthwhile. Though that's probably enough for my Nurgle stuff for a time being again. I'd probably wait a few more months before I look for a third Great Unclean one. The model itself from Titanforge I can recommend. It's a beautiful sculpt. So I had a little bit of fun getting this arm on, but not too much trouble. All in all, it was nice and easy to put together and print. Same goes for the physical Titanforge miniatures. They're nice looking sculpts. I've just not had the best luck with the sort of quality of the sculpts that I've picked up in the past. But they've definitely got some interesting stuff. So as ever, there'll be links to the My Mini Factory shop where you can pick this guy up from, and the physical Titanforge store for you to take a look at. Definitely worth checking out for some interesting sculpts and concepts. And that's all for this video. Please let me know what you thought down in the comments. Maybe subscribe for more. And as ever, thanks for watching. Bye.